occur will change world history. Nothing will remain the same. Let the unbelievers, let the skeptics, let the religious ones know that what they fear the most is about to happen. My warm season of grace and mercy will soon turn to a chilling winter of judgment and wrath.
Okay, we want to welcome everyone tonight. You are listening to Prophecy Quake. I'm your host tonight, Pastor Dean Odle, along with my co-host, Pastor Kevin Wilkinson. We welcome you. We are live here in East Central Alabama. It is February 27th, 2018. We have a lot to cover tonight. Been wanting to get on this subject for some time. Wow, just blown away by what's going on. Kevin and I have been here for a couple of hours, and this thing has just been evolving. Tonight we're going to talk about the push, the massive, and I say it, satanic push for gun control in the U.S. and exactly where that's going to lead. We're going to also address the pedophile-loaded United Nations and the role that they're playing in all this and that they're going to play. Folks, I'm serious. We are in the last of the last days, and we're headed into, I think, a very, very dangerous season, because what all this push for gun control is telling me right now, and we're talking about a massive, all-out, full-court press for gun control. I believe that the deep state, the Luciferian global elite, the Luciferian masters leading in this whole thing to push for the one world government and the new world order, however you want to call it, the Antichrist government, the beast government as the Bible calls it, and the Antichrist leading that. This push for the one world government. In fact, the one world, the World Government Summit was just a couple of weeks ago. I looked at that. I'm just blown away. It's just, folks, Bible prophecy is happening everywhere. But I really believe that they know that they've got to cripple the United States and get control of the United States. And that's one of the most important things. And of course, they know, though, and what this tells me, this push for gun control, and what this really tells me is that they know that there's still too many American citizens, Christian patriots, just loyal Americans, loyal to their country, loyal to the Constitution of the United States, all about our freedoms and maintaining and keeping our freedom. They know there's too many of us, and so this massive push is to try to get rid of the guns. Now, I don't believe they're going to be able to do it. They're going to try to do it. I don't believe they're going to be able to do it. We'll get into all that in a minute, but that will unleash their next phase, which it won't be just false flag, school shooting or whatever, Las Vegas type shooting. They're probably here in the near future going to give up on that and move to more drastic measures. So I actually believe, now this is not, I'm not saying thus saith the Lord, I'm just telling you what I believe, just looking at how things are unfolding. But I really believe that they're going to unleash massive false flag events in America, probably biological, chemical, maybe even nuclear, and at some point so that they can distract and all the people that Obama and the Clintons planted, and the Bush family planted within the government, particularly the Muslims, they planted within law enforcement and the deep state intelligence agencies, where they can move to take over or try to take over. It's going to get interesting, really interesting. This shouldn't take us by surprise. But again, I want to say this at the outset, because I'm going to talk about guns tonight. I'm going to talk about Christians having guns. I've been attacked for this a little bit here lately, which I understand. And I'm going to say this. I know that there are some Christians that fall on the side of, we don't need any guns, and fine, if that's your position, that's your position. But don't dare criticize or condemn others if they do feel that aspect of providing for their family is important. And I'm going to touch on all this tonight because I probably get the question from honest Christians wrestling with, should I protect my family? Should I be prepared to defend myself and others? I'm going to share with you how I feel about the subject, what I believe the Scripture says and about it. And so we're going to try to answer that question for you tonight. But let me just say this. Our most important weapon as Christians, as believers in Jesus Christ, is prayer, spiritual warfare, getting close to Jesus, exercising our authority over demons and principalities and powers against Satan. That's our most important weapon. Fasting, hearing God's voice, obeying Him. But secondly, we must do our best to prepare ourselves, and especially men out there. I'm talking to men who have wives and children, and even single men. There should be something in you as a man. Maybe you're not worried about yourself, and that's fine. But you think about it, you should have the mentality of being, I want to be able to defend and help those that are drawn toward death, those that are weaker, or those that could be victims. And so I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to tell you right now, this pastor right here, there probably wouldn't be too many times ever you would find me not carrying a handgun. So if that offends you, be offended. I have a wife and a daughter, and I will defend them, and with everything I have. And if there were no guns, I would pick up a sword or a knife. We'll talk about that too. Or with my bare hands. I would do whatever was necessary to protect and defend the life, the health of my wife and children. And folks, I'm going to tell you, if I'm in a Walmart and someone comes in and starts shooting, I'm not running away from the shooter. I'm running towards him. With a gun or without a gun, I'm running towards him to stop it. And that's just, I just think, there's a lot of men out there, and there's a lot of Christian men that have turned effeminate. I'm just going to tell you, you've turned sissy. Like, what's his name? Arnold used to say, girly men. I mean, this is these guys that stood outside that school and didn't run in there. I have absolute no regard or respect for any kind of man like that. And I don't care if you're old and you're getting weak and tired, you can do something. But we're going to talk about all that, about the Bible, what the Bible has to say about it. But I felt it was important. I felt it was important for those of you out there to understand where gun control always leads. Now, we've always seen the historical memes out there that talks about every time a government comes in and takes away people's arms, whether it be they just had swords, like the Philistines took away all of Israel's swords and even their smiths, so no one can make a sword. And this going back, you go back to 1 Samuel chapter 13, they didn't want Israel to have any swords because they didn't want Israel to rise up, fight, resist, and regain their freedom from the Philistines, from the evil Philistines. So this is nothing new, but every time we see gun control, we see it leads to tyranny, it leads to mass murder by the government of its own people. You become an enemy of the state, or you become a slave who has to worship and serve the state. And this is what our forefathers of this country fought so hard to give us. And some of them were Christian and some of them were not Christians. But they believed in the principles of freedom of speech and the right to bear arms. The first two amendments of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. And frankly, you cannot even ensure Amendment 1 unless you have Amendment 2. You can't ensure the freedom of speech and of the press unless you have the Second Amendment, which guarantees the right to bear arms by every citizen of the country. And so this to me is an important thing. I mean, the people out there, and I'm going to say some preachers, Christians, that are starting to turn anti-gun, they don't even understand that it's been the gun in America that has kept us having a place of relative peace, prosperity, freedom to worship and say what we want, to work where we want, to live where we want, to move around. You know, folks forget the Japanese, one of the reasons that they didn't invade, and they could have, when they came in and destroyed Pearl Harbor, and they could have just kept coming. One of the reasons that the Japanese in World War II did not put troops on the ground in California and then invade the United States is because their admirals, and one of them that had gone to school here beforehand, said there is a rifle behind every blade of grass. So if you invade the United States, you're not just dealing with the United States military, you're dealing with the people who will fight for their homes and their families. And frankly, I don't see anything that's unchristian about that. And I'm going to tell you, I would do it in a heartbeat. So let's get into this tonight. First, what we're going to do, and we usually don't have a clip this long, but we have several videos that we need to play tonight. The first one I want to play tonight, and I watched it earlier today, and I just thought it was vitally important for everyone to see this because, and again, I don't always believe everything I hear from Alex Jones, InfoWars. I don't, you know, fully even trust the man, but I can tell you there's a lot of stuff he's dead on about, and he just puts the evidence out there. He just puts the stuff out there, and I thought, well, I don't care if you like Alex Jones or you don't like Alex Jones. This was true and good information that he put out there today. But some of you out there, you're sleeping through all this stuff, or you know people that's really they're sleeping through this stuff. And so that's why I've called this gun control in the gray state. We're going to look at the gray state trailer here in just a minute. But you need to know, and the reason I put this United Nations talking about the pedophile beast, a lot of you don't even know about the pedophile scandal that's broken wide open in the UN. But you have to understand, these are the people that are coming for you and your children. So you better decide whether you're ready to let the blue helmets come in and take your wives and children, because I'm telling you where they're taking them. Once they kill you, they're taking them to be sex slaves or trafficked or whatever. And they don't care how young and they don't care how old. You just have to say, we're up against great evil here. We are in an unprecedented time that Jesus even said that the end time. He said the end time judgments and the end time rise of evil and Satan and his plan would be unlike any other time. It would be the worst time ever in the history of man and the history of nations. So we are moving into some unprecedented areas, and you're going to have to make up your mind what you're going to do when we enter that state. But anyway, we've got a clip. It's about 20 minutes long. Please don't stray, because we're going to come back. Every single thing we have for you tonight has a purpose. Before I go, I want to read this, though. I want to read, Kevin, you can put it up if you want to. This is Luke 22. I want everybody to look at Luke 22, something Jesus said here. Because everybody start thinking, oh, Jesus said turn the other cheek. Yeah, Jesus said turn the other cheek, but he also told the disciples to go buy swords at the end. And a sword in that day was very expensive. And it was the most, well, it was very expensive, and it was the most sophisticated weapon of the day. And let me tell you something, a good sword even now will cost you thousands of dollars if you get a really, really good sword that's, you know, hard, you know, beaten out, hardened steel, you know, just made right. And listen, I say this as one who was trained in martial arts with swords. A sword, if I couldn't have a gun, let me tell you something. You didn't have a gun and you wanted to clean a room, and you say you can have a baseball bat, you can have a knife, or you can have a sword. Give me the sword. You will clean the room. And you will clean the room against the baseball bat and the knives and everything else if you know how to use one. So Jesus told them here, his disciples, to sell their garment, sell something, guys, and buy a sword. And this is something that you have to understand. Say, turn the other cheek, buy a sword. That sounds contradictory. No. Jesus, many times, if anything sounds contradictory, 9 times out of 10, it's the context of the situation. And there's a context, and I've said this many times. For instance, if I'm standing on the street corner preaching the gospel, and someone comes up and they're persecuting me because I'm a Christian and I'm preaching the gospel and they want to kill me, I'm going to let God handle it. I'm not pulling a gun. I'm not pulling a weapon. I'm not resisting. And I have done that. I've been assaulted while preaching the gospel. Not many people can say that. And God, I mean, this guy punched me and I didn't feel it. But what I'm getting at here is there's a different scenario. There's different situations when you talk about providing security and protection and safety for your wife, your children, and caring about people around you and not just watching as people are being, drawn toward death. And we'll get to that. That's Proverbs 24. But here's what Jesus said. We're just going to read Jesus' words here. And this is Luke chapter 22. We're going to go down to verse 35. And this is Jesus speaking. And he said unto them, When I sent you without purse and scrip and shoes, lacked ye anything? And they said, Nothing. Then said he unto them, But now he that hath a purse, let him take it, and likewise his scrip. And he that hath no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. For I say unto you that this that is written must yet be accomplished in me. And he was reckoned among the transgressors, for the things concerning me have an end. And they said unto him, Lord, behold, there are 2 swords. So they said that we already have 2 swords. Now the disciples, think about this. The disciples, the 12, 2 of them were carrying swords. We know who one of them was carrying a sword. We know it was Peter. So Jesus never told them to get rid of the swords. In fact, he told them to go buy swords. And then they brought up, well, Lord, we have 2. And he said, well, that's enough for now. But he told them to go buy swords. I believe it had to do with Jesus saying, look, I'm not always against you having what you need to protect people around you, protect your family. Peter was one of the older apostles. He had a wife and children. I think that's one of the reasons he had one of the swords. But again, a sword was very expensive, even in that day. And Jesus tells him, go sell something and buy a sword. If you don't have a sword, buy a sword. So you weapon people out there that are against weapons and gun, you're Christians that are passive and think that it's wrong and think you're not trusting God. I tell people all the time, I say, God is light. God is light. The Bible says God is light and in him is no darkness at all. Well, am I in unbelief if I call the power company to hook up power to my house and go buy light bulbs so I can have light in my house? No. I mean, it's the same thing. The Bible says, take no thought for what you shall wear. Well, am I wrong if I go down to, Kohl's or Walmart or some store and buy some clothes to put on and actually put them on? You see, some folks, you get into ridiculousness. People want to talk about, you just need to trust God to protect you. Well, let me ask something. The Bible says God is our provider. Do you trust God to provide your food? Or do you actually get in the car and drive down to the grocery store after you have worked and made money and purchased the store? Or do you go out and plant a garden and grow your own food? Do you sit back and do nothing? See, the idea that we sit back and do nothing is never, ever God's plan. He always wants us to do our part, and then he'll do what we cannot do. And so I look at it very clearly as it's my part to take care of my wife and children. We'll get back to that. But I want you to see where this is headed because I'm just blown away. There are literally people calling for the Second Amendment to be repealed. Now, of course, that would be an impossible task in the United States. I mean, impossible, because to repeal an amendment like that, you're going to have, a supermajority in the Senate. Then you're going to have three-fourths of the states are going to have to ratify any amendment to the Constitution. Not going to happen in America. It's not going to happen. Now, they're going to try to make laws to start taking these things, guns, and try to hinder things, infringe our right to bear arms. The reason they're after the AR-15 is because it's one of the most effective defense weapons against multiple attackers. That's why they're after that. And the bullet, though not a large bullet, has a nice velocity to it. So they don't want me or you having anything that could adequately defend ourselves against multiple blue helmet pedophiles. But we'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, let's listen to this clip by Alex Jones. Please don't go away. We got so much to cover tonight, but you need to hear this. And they're hacking and shutting down Alex Jones, and even CNN, they're trying to shut him down. And so that's why I wanted to replay this even on our channel tonight. So So please listen to this.
The headline is, there is a massive globalist Democrat purge of thousands of established conservative, libertarian, Christian, pro-Second Amendment sites. Yeah, it's not just the famous baseball player that simply sent out a tweet pointing out that the 4 young people we see out of the 3,000 students clearly have been scripted. They spin that and say Kurt Schilling says they're all actors and the shooting never happened, and then he's banned from the Hall of Fame. It's a giant Schilling effect where they're going after the Second Amendment, they're going after the NRA, they're going after gun shops. They're saying, we're not going to let you have credit cards, NRA. We're not going to let you have merchant accounts. We're not going to let you operate in society. And it's the big banks with the media and the whole system, and the main targets are the Trump family, InfoWars, and the NRA. They're attacking people they fear that tell the truth, understand what's happening.
Isn't the difficulty here legislatively the Constitution, which is Bret Stevens' point in the New York Times, which is he's calling for the repeal of the Second Amendment. And he says the United States has by far more guns in more hands than any other country in the developed world. It has by far the highest incidence of firearm-related homicides and suicides. Correlation is not causation, but since Americans aren't dramatically crazier than other nationalities, what other explanation is there? However, it is in our Constitution, unlike other Western democracies.
Yeah.
There they are, saying, what a wonderful idea in the New York Times. Let's just float it. Let's repeal the Second Amendment. Let's get rid of it, because that's what we really want to do, is take guns from the average person. And this is their big assault. This is their big push. And I don't like hearing stuff out of Eric Trump's mouth about it's no big deal to ban people up to 21 having firearms. That's all about discriminating against everybody else that doesn't do anything wrong, just because the media and governments sit there and promote mass shootings and create these victim disarmament zones. And then they have almost every one of these shooters under state care on psychotropic drugs, and the insert of the drug class says it can cause you to have psychotic breaks and engage in mass murder. They knew that back in the 70s and couldn't get serotonin reuptake inhibitors approved because they caused psychotic breaks in a few percentage points of people. I've known women on these drugs, because women is the largest group, and I've had girlfriends, a couple of them, and if they drink one beer, their pupils go all the way out, bigger than somebody on PCP. And they just are totally insane. And then there, of course, is nymphomaniac activity as well. I mean, it is out of their minds. With just 2 people I've known that have been on it, and you end up taking some other pills with it or something, cuckoo land. Then all these young kids are playing shoot-'em-up video games. I'm not saying ban those. I'm talking about the facts. They're all shoot-'em-up video game obsessed. They're all on serotonin reuptake inhibitors. I mean, I haven't seen a case where they aren't. Basically, it's all of them. Every major mass shooting. And then they're about half the time in state care. And then you get another stand down, the bizarre statements of this sheriff that are coming up, where he's doing a fantastic job and he's fantastic and it's not his problem if his deputies don't go in and stop shooters. Total dereliction of duty. It's incredible. And then we know the big plan. It is to get rid of shooting sports. It's to get rid of young people even being able to shoot firearms with their parents. We've already seen all the bills they've tried to get through before at the state and federal level, and it's to ban anybody until 18 to 21, depending on what state. The Democrats have pushed this. They even tried it in Texas, which got me politically involved 25 years ago, to say that anybody under 21 in Texas couldn't even touch a firearm or even have their grandfather or father or anybody buy them a firearm. So I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to be very calm today. I have to be, because I've got a long way to go and a short time to get there. Because what I should have opened the broadcast up with is our top story, and I'm going to go over all of it here today. A lot of times I don't recognize what's happening until I'm already wrapped up in the bailing wire. But you're getting it here first, and no one else is announcing it, and I wish people were. And it took me until this weekend to figure it out, and now it's crystal clear. I just got chills. The globalists are launching their full revolution against us right now, and it's going to be a lot more than just the guns. We're going to come back and talk about it on the other side. Stay with us. Ladies and gentlemen, Tim Frugier, the operations director here at InfoWars, just walked in seconds before I went live on air. He was just here. And he said, it's incredible. You called me last night, and you predicted that this would happen this week. I've got it right here on my phone when I called him last night. And sure enough, he just walked in and he said, we've got biggest DDoS attack ever, even though we've got all these backup servers that has brought InfoWars down. He's like, how did you know that would happen today? And I said, well, it's obvious. CNN is on television, not operating as a news agency, but as a criminal globalist combine involved in a purge. And that's the headlines we sent out on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter on our backup accounts, because they've shut us down on YouTube being able to stream. And they are moving to remove us from the internet. And if you notice the headlines I put out at the start of the show, when it went live, 5 minutes before Tim Frugier walked in here and told me what just happened, the headline is, there is a massive globalist Democrat purge of thousands of established conservative, libertarian, Christian, pro-Second Amendment sites. Yeah, it's not just the famous baseball player that simply sent out a tweet pointing out that the 4 young people we see out of the 3,000 students clearly have been scripted. They spin that and say Kurt Schilling says they're all actors and the shooting never happened, and then he's banned from the Hall of Fame. It's a giant Schilling effect where they're going after the Second Amendment, they're going after the NRA, they're going after gun shops. They're saying, we're not going to let you have credit cards, NRA. We're not going to let you have merchant accounts. We're not going to let you operate in society. And it's the big banks with the media and the whole system, and the main targets are the Trump family, InfoWars, and the NRA. They're attacking people they fear that tell the truth, understand what's happening. They're going after the Motor City madman Ted Nugent, who happens to be on in the next hour. They are telling incredible lies on Colbert, on Kimmel. They will misrepresent what people have said. CNN Friday said, we are in consultation and inside Alex Jones's accounts on YouTube and working with them to have his sites and his presence on YouTube banned. And then they had Glenn Beck, Dan Rather, and David Hogg, the young man, the senior, on TV talking about banning the pollution of Alex Jones. And Hogg didn't agree with Beck and Stelter and Dan Rather on the same show. He said, oh, they've made me really big saying the shooting didn't happen and that I'm a crisis actor. We didn't say that. Nobody said that about you. We point out you're in the drama club, you're an anti-gun activist, you've been involved before, you're in the journalism club, your mom works at CNN, your dad works for the FBI. Out of 3,000 students, television's the David Hogg channel. We're just saying you're an anti-gun spokesperson. And so they spin that and we're bullying children, put it in newspapers across the country, never quote us, and then move CNN as a supposed news agency to shut InfoWars down. Then I start getting flooded with hundreds of phone calls, hundreds and hundreds of emails, and comments everywhere where established pro-military firearm review sites, just normal commerce, the stuff the military and the police buy, being totally banned, where they just black out all your videos, they delete them. Here's just one example, Military Arms Channel. Huge channel, reached hundreds of millions of people. Hundreds of every one of their videos deleted. Just reviews. Range day, hunting. Oh, see, they want to ban the Second Amendment, and they want to ban the speech about it. And I told everybody on Friday, I said, you hang together, you hang separate. Only Matt Drudge linked to our article on Friday night and to the 2 banned videos that YouTube banned. We hosted them on our own server. As of Saturday evening, there were 7 million views. I haven't looked at it. I dread to see what the views are now because just that was $3,400, I know, on our own bandwidth. And I said right there, I told Tim Frichet last night, I said, man, they're not going to let us actually show what we really said because they can't do that because then it shows what liars they are. They're going to try to take the sites down. So Infowars.com is down right now. That's why we have Newswars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. And I'm sure those listening will now hit those. But this is what they're up to. And they're doing it to a lot of other people right now. Dana Loesch got up there and they said, you are a murderer. And then they started saying, burn her, and she had to get out with security as people rushed the stage to attack her. They have kill the NRA signs up. They have hashtag hunt Republicans on CNN. There are mayors all over the country. I watched one this morning in Oakland saying, we will not allow any deportation or any federal officers ever here. And we're telling people to resist when they come. Racketeering, you name it. They said, you're coming with warrants for MS-13 at drug houses for people deported sometimes 20, 30 times. San Francisco lets people off that shoot women in the back and admit it. And they go, we're letting you go as a symbol. Do whatever you want. And I'm sitting there this morning watching her live on CNN, the mayor, saying, I'll go to jail. And here's the big announcement. I've known this and understood it, but it really hit me. They have radicalized and criminalized even the lowest level Democrat now. They have activated them through social media, through all their manipulation, what Sean Parker talked about, the dopamine manipulation, the fake bots. Under fake peer pressure, they have got them just vicious. I mean, if I walk on the street in Austin, 20 people walk by, 10 of them say, hi, Alex, keep it up. One of them starts trying to attack me. Men, women, children, you name it. They are totally, and they start screaming, Nazi, Nazi, Russian, Russian. They are just, and they believe they're allowed to attack. Once you get back and get ready to knock them upside the head, they go, what are you doing? I'm just going to spit and attack you. I'm allowed to attack. It's LARPing. It's live action role playing. And they always look mentally ill. They always look disheveled. They always look like they're just totally whacked out of every race, color, and creed. Even if they're getting in a nice car, they'll kind of stumble and they're like, they're not awake. They're in a trance state. They have been hypnotically put into a trance. This is medical. This is mainstream news. I see articles every day where admitting kids are in a trance state, near sleep state, from the smartphones, the TV, all of it. So there is a full-on criminal attack where you've got CNN saying, cops get killed, it's because cops are bad. They want to bully you into going under federal control, which a lot of cities are doing. And under UN control, under the strong cities. They're just ignoring serious hardened criminals that are here, saying we're not going to let you deport them. They are savagely running around saying, oh, Alex Jones bullied children, and then deleting videos where we show, just from last week, 3 different youth in the school saying there were multiple shooters, and now more of that's coming out. And then they totally misrepresent and say it's something else. And then we try to put up the videos so you can see them, and they just took our site down. And this is going to post this to newswars.com. Everybody, as soon as it goes up, they may take that site down as well. You've got to get this information right now. You've got to get it out. Parkland teacher said full-on military gear, not him. Like the other students said, they saw people in military garb, not just one. And that it was wearing a face mask, everything. And there's witnesses that, again, the shooter was with other young people when this happened. The eyewitnesses have been on the show. It's been on the local news. So that's why they're so desperate. It turns out there is a cover-up here. The official story is not true.
You know, someone very profoundly once said, many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
You're a white male! You're a white man!
If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
We confirm suspicions at Veritas. It's not a shock to you, but to get the employee at YouTube on tape admitting that they do it? I mean, you must be a threat if they call you out by name.
It's also what happens when you listen to the radio host, Alex Jones.
As of just a short time ago, and I'm talking about when this meeting started, on Twitter, if you clicked on the hashtag NYC terrorist attack, which is, quote, trending, marked with a red button saying, quote, live, the top tweet links to an InfoWars story with the headline, Imam, I warned de Blasio about New York City terror. He was too busy bashing Trump.
I don't know what happens in somebody's mind or how dark their heart must be to say things like that.
This is a real-time example of when we talk about this information being weaponized.
But Trump doesn't challenge these lies. He actually went on Jones's show and said,
your reputation's amazing. I will not let you down. You will be very, very impressed, I hope.
He still calls Alex Jones and talks to him, and, you know, the InfoWars conspiracy theories.
How quickly can you act, and what's your responsibility to set the record straight so that the people who saw this know that it's fake news, and at least at some point in time it can't keep spreading like some sort of virus through the legitimate world?
That's something we're thinking about all the time, because it's a bad user experience, and we don't want to be known as a platform for that.
The Russians ran an extensive information war campaign against my campaign to influence voters in the election. They did it through false news sites. They did it through these 1,000 agents. They did it through machine learning, which, you know, kept spewing out this stuff over and over again. And they began to have some of their allies within the internet world, like InfoWars, take out pieces and began to say the most outrageous, outlandish, absurd lies you can imagine.
Google is being accused of hiding negative stories about Hillary and her campaign by changing its algorithm to bury stories like the Clinton body count story. That's according to website InfoWars.
You have RT, you have Sputnik, you have Rupley, and then I think you have them feeding other entities. InfoWars comes to mind, where those are echo chambers.
It's been widely reported that that company's been backed by the Kremlin, and they gave you 75,000 shares that you had to disclose when you went into the Obama administration.
Maybe you're looking at widely reported information from InfoWars.
No, I'm not.
But it is not
true. This is Politico. This is the New York Times. This is the Wall Street Journal.
No, it's not.
If a Google user types in Clinton body, they get car repair shop results instead of a story that talks about a list of people tied to the Clintons who have died under mysterious circumstances over the last 3 decades. Now, the latest story was the death of DNC staffer Seth Rich, who was murdered last month in an apparent robbery. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has hinted that Rich was his source, but has made no further comments about the case. That murder, we should say, remains unsolved.
The Russians, in my opinion, and based on the intel and counter-intel people I've talked to, could not have known how best to weaponize that information unless they had been guided.
All that stuff exists. You don't see it, you don't feel it if you're largely living in reality and in a mainstream media world. But it's undermining our democracy, and I think that the companies themselves, they've taken some steps. They have a lot of responsibility.
Companies like Facebook.
Like Facebook, Google, etc.
Right.
To do what they can to essentially not enhance this.
How quickly can you act, and what's your responsibility to set the record straight?
The system self-corrected. That shouldn't be the first tweet you see anymore. It should be a USA article the last time I checked.
But you saw this.
USA Today. At lunch I did, yeah. And I also saw the system correct it.
That man's a threat to this country.
They didn't call out Fox News by name. They didn't call out anyone else by name. They said, when it comes to Alex Jones, We need people to scroll and manually find him and manually have to find that video. We're not going to allow that video, if it gets 10 million views, to be on the front of the so-called news carousel.
Okay, we're back. I'm glad that you guys stayed with us. I know that was a long clip, but I think it was very important for you to see the push, not just the push for gun control, but the censorship that they're admitting that they're working into search engines. I tell you, one of the things that just, I'm watching here on the monitor, and it just blows my mind that evil, satanic witch Hillary Clinton can talk about someone having a dark heart. The Clintons have had more people killed than probably any political duo in American history, and it's just mind-boggling. And then to watch up there, her campaign guy and Obama's once chief of staff, Podesta, sit there and talk about they need that YouTube and Google and these other need to do something about people like Alex Jones and the alternative media, basically censor them, knowing that WikiLeaks busted this guy. And he was fully involved. He's a fully involved pedophile, and I don't even have time to get into that. All these people, these people up here pushing the UN, pushing the gun control, pushing the censorship. I mean, they're really fighting against the First and the Second Amendment big time. People like Podesta and Clinton and Obama. I mean, these people are pushing this stuff, and they are Satanists. They are pedophiles. They want your children. Because they want to molest your children, and that's just the way it is. And there is no question in my mind. I've seen. I have a 100-page document on Podesta. This guy is guilty as sin. Him and his brother, the Clintons. They're Satanists. They're child molesters. They're human traffickers. They're sex slave traffickers, and they want to talk about taking away your guns, and they want to talk about taking away your ability to protect yourself. And push the UN agenda here, and we're going to get into that too. But I want to show you this. I want to show you this. This, I was so hoping that this movie would get made and come out. This was a private filmmaker. He was an Iraq veteran. His name was Crowley, and he was putting together this movie called Gray State. And of course, in the middle of it being, the trailer was released, just millions of views on the trailer. But then, of course, he comes up, his family is all shot to death in their house before this movie can be finished and released. Of course, it was ruled a murder-suicide. I don't know if anybody's seen the movie, The Shooter, with Mark, what's his name, Wahlberg. Anyway, they flat out tell you that it's the government agencies have ways to suicide you, make it look like you shot yourself and all this. I have no doubt that the deep state, the Luciferians, and especially this happened during Obama's time in office, I have no doubt that they killed this man and his family. But I want to play this trailer, The Gray State. Many of you have probably already seen it. But it's just, I don't know, it's stayed on my mind lately because, folks, you need to get a grasp on what is coming. And even today, I was sent, before we play this, I was sent a Christian lady on Facebook that I'm friends with. Her 12-year-old son had this dream, and I'm like, and she had no idea what I'm planning to share tonight. I mean, and she sends me this dream of her 12-year-old. Let me make sure I'm getting that right. I believe he's 12. Where is it? Here we go. Oh, here we go. I had to go back a little bit because we chatted for a minute. But she said here, where does it start here? I'm having a hard time. Okay, here we go. It says, so my 11-year-old son tells me that he had a dream 2 nights ago, and it was the end times. And we were at home and these bad guys came into our home and got rid of my husband Jim, me, our daughter Kate, and Kat rather, and youngest son. I'm gonna try not to name names, but anyway, I got to reading. Sorry about that. But anyway, we were the only ones left, and we're taken to another place. She said FEMA camp or something. I'm not sure, but he was talking about how they were taken somewhere else. Anyway, while they were there, these evil people started beating one of their family members with sticks, and her son saw it and started crying. And the guy that was getting beaten in his dream said, "Don't worry, we'll see one another in heaven." And after that, he died and found himself in heaven, happy and joyful. And then she said, "I've had dreams of walking down this narrow pathway and lines of people on either side of me, dropping off the cliff and falling into flames." And, you know, we just talked about that. But I thought, how interesting. An 11-year-old boy doesn't know this stuff, and he's having dreams about it. He's having dreams about this right here, Gray State. And let me tell you, this is why they want to take us to this place that's perfectly depicted in this Gray States trailer. Let's play that, brother.
Sit right
dreamt about how things were.
Of every enemy of the state!
And then I woke up here.
And there you have it. This is clearly Revelation chapter 13. Let's read it. Revelation 13. Because it's time to just wake up to reality that this is where these people are wanting to go. That movie didn't get made because that man and his family were murdered. And then the Huffington Post and liberal press run by these Luciferians tried to make him out as a man who was falling into paranoia and basically mocking his entire movie, which is a clear, he was presenting clearly where this New World Order, these Luciferian, these deep state people who want gun control, where they want to take us. The FEMA camp thing, it's not a myth. It's not a myth. I mean, as this thing got revealed to my wife by a friend of hers who worked for Homeland Security back in 2008. I mean, I know it's not a myth. And it's not just on the internet, folks. I'm telling you, this is Revelation 13. He says this. I mean, he talks about this beast rising up out of the sea. And I've shared, I know that this beast with 7 heads and 10 horns is the United Nations. There's no question about it. It's the beast creatures, the bear, the leopard. These are nations of the world from Daniel 7. They unite in Revelation 13. That's uniting of nations. It is a beast that rises up out of the sea. Let's read it, verse 1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon its horns 10 crowns, and upon its heads the names of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon, or Satan, gave him his power and his seat and great authority. I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. So everybody's going to be, that's why you're seeing this mass trance-like hypnotic state that Alex Jones was talking about that's having people. It's just like, oh yeah, get rid of the guns. UN, we love you. You know, America, we hate you. I mean, it's just insanity. But the world is beginning to wonder after the beast. And it says, and they worship the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worship the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things in blasphemies. And power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. And look at verse 7. And it was given to him, this beast and the man who will lead it, it was given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And you say, well, Pastor Dean, it says right there, he's going to make war, and we're not necessarily going to win this war. I'm not talking about winning this war, but I'm talking about standing your ground. And standing for Jesus and standing for your family and your neighbors and your brothers and sisters in Christ. I'm talking about being willing to do whatever's necessary to protect them and to resist this. We're not called to just lay down and let it happen. But it says it was given him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. And all that dwell upon the face of the earth shall worship him. That is the beast, the Antichrist, this beast system, this government, this world government that's coming. It says, whose names are not written in the Lamb's book of life, or the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Now, I'm not going to keep reading. It goes on about the mark of the beast at the end. And I do believe it talks about there will be, you go down to verse 16, and he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, to receive a mark in the right hand or in the forehead, inside the brain, that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So very clearly right there. I mean, I'm telling you, I don't know if the Gray State guy, Crowley, the filmmaker, was saved or not. I don't think he was, but he looked at what was coming. He knew their plans. He was putting it in a movie, and then he and his family get slaughtered. I mean, wake up, folks. This is what's happening. This is what's going on. It's mind-boggling. And these shootings, I'm telling you, these shootings are planned. These shootings are these mass shootings, these Las Vegas, the school shootings. These things are planned by the government. And folks, again, the media starts telling us, oh, if you say anything like that, you're a conspiracy theorist and you're crazy. And yet eyewitnesses. Let's play the teacher clip. This is a teacher. Alex Jones mentioned in a minute. This I found just right before the show. This is one of the teachers who got grazed in the arm by a bullet, saw the shooter, and saw him, and she describes him in full body armor. And then I'm going to read to you the account of what happened, that the guy got there, the alleged shooter, the Nick Cruz, or whatever, Nicholas Cruz, got there in an Uber ride at 2:19 p.m. and within 1 minute started his attack, but had hidden his gun in his duffel bag. Do you believe that in 1 minute he suited up in full body armor with helmet and everything? No. But this teacher sees a guy that looked like a military, where she thought it was a police person shooting students. Let's play it. This is an eyewitness, one of the teachers.
Just 1 week ago, Valentine's Day. Creative writing teacher Stacy Lapel's class was playing music, writing love letters when the fire alarm went off. As students filed into the hallway, she heard gunfire. The killing had begun.
I was about 2 feet away from my door. All of a sudden I heard gunshots in the stairwell, which is about 20 feet away from my room. And then kids were screaming and then running back towards me and towards the end of the hallway. So I just went in this very strange autopilot mode where I pivoted on my feet. I unlocked my door, and then kids just started pouring in my room. I don't know how many kids were in there, but I was pulling them and getting them in and shouting at them to get in the room. And then I suddenly saw the shooter about 20 feet from me, standing at the end of the hallway, actively shooting down the hallway, just a barrage of bullets. And I'm staring at him thinking, why is the police here? This is strange, because he's in full metal garb, helmet, face mask, bulletproof armor, shooting this rifle that I've never seen before. I don't know when I decided it was the right time to close the door. I grabbed the handle with both hands, and that's when I got nicked or grazed or whatever you call it.
So a bullet hit your arm?
Yes. As I'm closing my door, I'm shouting at my next door neighbor, Mr. Scott Beagle, to close his door.
So, there you have it. I mean, you hear the teacher say, this guy was in full body armor, helmet, face covered, whole 9 yards, vest, looked like a cop, looked like military. But yet, Nicholas Cruz arrived there in an Uber ride, hiding what he was doing, and would begin the shooting within 1 minute of his arrival. Folks, we really got to wake up. We really got to wake up. You know, everything Alex Jones was talking, we're not saying that the shooting didn't happen, but I'm just telling you, these shootings are drugged up kids being used by, I believe, deep state individuals. And I know people say, well, you're crazy. I don't care what you say. You look into it at all. I mean, again, this NBC News reporting. He started shooting within 1 minute of getting there in an Uber ride. When did he have time to suit up in full body armor? And then, of course, just like Alex Jones said, multiple witnesses said there were multiple shooters. How many times do we have to be told there's multiple shooters? And yet it's always the lone gunman, right? That's always the official story. Now here's what gets me when we talk about this gun control crap. Right before the show, Kevin shows me this Broward County Sheriff's deputy teaching a mosque now, Muslims in a mosque, that they have a Second Amendment right in America and they should prepare to defend themselves, defend their mosque. We're going to play that clip. And then we're going to play a clip of the Broward County Sheriff talking about we need gun control. I about lost my mind when I saw this. But let's play the clip of the Broward County Sheriff Deputy teaching the Muslims to bear arms, to conceal carry, to be ready to defend themselves. But no, the rest of us in America should give up let them pass gun control. I'm just blown away. Let's go. Let's play it.
I'm shooting you. No. I'm still shooting you. I'm shooting you and I'm killing you and everyone is just looking at what I'm doing. That's real. You need to understand that. So if you're dealing with the threat, deal with the threat. You're able to conceal in this state. It's your Second Amendment right. So I want to go over some things with you regarding your right to return fire. Because it's important. And we need to know our rights, and that's what my job is, to make sure you know your rights.
Need to carry. Go ahead, brother. Blown away.
Let me respond to that. First of all,
we've talked about the Broward Sheriff's Office and some other local agencies and the FBI getting tips and what have you. America, there's one person responsible for this act. That's the detestable, violent killer. He is responsible for this act. Nobody else but him. There's three things we need to do in America to keep America safe. Number one, we have to use through crime prevention, through environmental design, build schools differently so they're harder to penetrate. Number two, we need to be empowering police officers and deputy sheriffs throughout the nation to be able to take people who are an immediate threat to themselves or an immediate threat to someone else to be examined. And we need to take guns away from them forever. They should never get them back. They should have to go through a psychological evaluation. And if we have a doctor or a clinician have to sign their John Hancock and say that person should be given back their Second Amendment right, we're not going to see doctors do that. But lastly, we do need to have some gun control reform. 18-year-olds should never have a rifle. An 18-year-old kid should not have a rifle. 18-year-old kid, they're not adults yet. They're in high school. These kids should not have a rifle. Bump stocks should be illegal. They should be outlawed forever. Automatic rifles should be outlawed forever. And anybody who says different, I don't know about other people, but Emma and I, we're calling BS on that. So.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Now, I'm going to tell you, what's mind-blowing here is this guy is sending his deputies into mosques, telling them to arm up and prepare to defend themselves. Then he's calling for gun control. And let me tell you something. That's what one of their strategies is going to be, to try to make some kind of mental health thing. Listen, anybody can come along, oh, if you're too much of a conspiracy theorist, then you're mentally ill. And you know what? It's just unreal. But I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. If they push this much further, they're going to find themselves in a whole heap of trouble. I mean, we're talking about full-on martial law. I mean civil war. They're going to push martial law, and it's going to end up in complete civil war in America. We're not, and I love my Canadian friends, but we're not Canada. We're not going to hand over the gun. We're not Australia. We're not going to hand them over. We're not England or whatever. I mean, they know that, and they got a problem on their hands. And I'm just here to say, listen to me. I'm here to say to Christians out there, to Christian men, nowhere does this book say for you to sit back and let your wife be raped or your children be molested or your children be tortured and killed or kidnapped or taken from you and you sit there and do nothing. This book doesn't teach that. Let's go to 1 Timothy 5. My wife got accused, she pointed this out the other day, and got accused that she was taking this out of context. But I'm going to show you she was not taking it out of context. And 1 Timothy chapter 5, and let's go down to verse 8. And of course, he's just going through a litany of different things required of us. And then he says this right here in verse 8, 1 Timothy 5:8. Now remember, I already read the verse in Luke 22 about Jesus saying, go buy a sword. It's okay to have a sword. It's okay to have something to protect yourself and your family. But he says right here, but if any provide not for his own, and especially for those of his own house, he hath denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. Now let me read that again. The scripture says here, if any provide not for his own, and especially for those of his own house, he hath denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. Now, the word provide, I looked it up before the show tonight, just to make sure we understood. I looked it up in the Strong's and in the Thayer's Greek lexicons. But the Strong says provide is pranaeo. Pranaeo is the Greek word. And this is what it means, the word provide. It means to consider in advance. It means to look out for. Now think about that. To consider in advance and to look out for. Thayer says to perceive before, foresee, to provide, think of beforehand, take thought for, care for. I'm going to read those again. The Greek word here, provide, where it says in 1 Timothy 5:8, but if any provide not for his own, and especially for those of his own house, he hath denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. He goes on to say, consider, the word provide, pranaeo, to consider in advance, look out for, perceive before, foresee, to provide, to think of beforehand, to take thought for, to care for. Now, I've made this statement, and this is, again, if this logic is too logical for you, then I'm sorry. But think this through for a minute. As a man, as a husband, as a father, okay? And I know at different times all men have struggled with these things. So I'm not trying to condemn anybody here. I'm just telling you, as a man, the scriptures tell us we need to do our very best. We may not can do some things, but we are to do our very best to provide for our families. Now, if I'm to provide for my family, to care for them, to look out for them, to protect them, if you want to say the context of this, Pastor Dean, is food, clothing, and shelter. Okay, well, what's food, clothing, and shelter do for a family? It keeps them healthy. It keeps them alive. It keeps them safe from the elements. If I am required to do all that, how in the world can you say that if I have the power, the ability, the right to have a superior weapon in my house, how can you say I've got to provide those things for my family so that they are healthy, so that they thrive, so that they can survive and live? And yet I'm supposed to just lay down and let these pedophile United Nations soldiers come in my house to rape my wife and take my child and molest my child, my daughter, and sell her on the market to some Muslims? And you think I'm supposed to sit there and do nothing and not have a gun or not have a knife or not have a sword and not resist? I'm going to tell you right now, you are a fool if you think you're to lay down and let your wife be dragged off, or your daughter be dragged off, or your son. Yeah, a lot of these perverts like little boys. I'm telling you, you better wake up, man. Because I'm going to tell you, like I said, if I'm on the street corner preaching the gospel and somebody wants to come up and kill me, go ahead and try. My life is in God's hands. But if you want to come to my state, my home, my neighborhood, harm my family, my neighbors, come in my church, kill my friends and family and church family. No. You will have a fight on your hands. You will have a flat out war. And this one person tried to bring up, what about the guy who's blind and couldn't shoot a gun, or the guy who's crippled and could? You know what? It's the same thing. Those guys need to do the best they can. They might not can do that. But that doesn't say the rest of us shouldn't. I mean, there is some ridiculous arguments and logic to this right now. I'm telling you again, Jesus said get a sword. And here's another thing for you. Let's go to Proverbs. For these pacifists, or I don't know what you want to call it. I'm sick of it, man. And I know there's people out there. I'm contacted by an ex-Marine. I have a friend, Army Ranger. I mean, I know a bunch of, I've been contacted by Iraq veterans, Afghan war veterans. I know there's this dilemma. Nobody, listen, Kevin, we don't want to shoot anybody. We don't want to take anybody's life. We don't want that to happen. But I promise you, it comes down between some blue helmet pedophile thug and my wife. Can somebody say pile of hot brass? I mean, to me, I just sit back and go, this is logical. But Proverbs 24, let's read it. Sorry, I'm a little fired up tonight. And you need to understand, these blue helmets, this UN, they're coming for the United States. They're coming for your homes. They're coming for your wives and your children. And I'm going to prove it to you in just a second. I'm going to prove it to you. But Proverbs 24. Well, let's start reading here at verse 10. Proverbs 24, verse 10. It's time for men to be men. Tell me I can't have an automatic weapon. I should be allowed to have any weapon. My right to bear arms shall not be infringed. Second Amendment says, so I should be able to have anything I want. to defend myself when these governments decide to turn on us. But here's what Proverbs 10, we're going to read Proverbs 24, 10 through 11 here. If thou faint, become weak in the day of adversity, thy strength is small. For if thou forbear or hold back to deliver them that are drawn unto death and those that are ready to be slain, meaning if you stand back, you see people that are being delivered to death, that are ready to be slain. Some people are preparing to slay them, and you hold back and do nothing. If you say, behold, we knew it not, doth not he that pondereth the heart consider it? And he that keepeth thy soul, doth not he know it? And shall he not render to every man according to his works? And have we forgotten what Jesus said? Greater love has no man than a man be willing to lay down his life for his friends. It's not about me saving my life, but I will try to save somebody else's. Oh, I'm just blown away. You know, Ecclesiastes chapter 3, and I'm not going to turn there, but again, everything in its context, people. In Ecclesiastes, we all quote it, don't we? We quote it all the time. Oh, there's a time for everything. There's a time for embracing, and there's a time to refrain from embracing. Well, you know what it also says in there? It says there is a time of peace, and there is a time of war. These United Nations people are coming. They want our guns. Let's play for this clip. This clip it'll speak for itself. It's one of the UN's representative of the high representative commissioner of the UN back in 2016. I guess it was after Vegas shooting or whatever. But this is what they love. Listen, the UN has small arms treaties. They have, job postings for gun confiscation officers and everything else. Folks, let's just listen to them. This is the UN, but then we're going to see why. So let's go ahead.
How many more mass killings of school children, of co-workers, of African American churchgoers? How many more individual shootings of talented musicians like Christina Grimmie, who was shot last weekend, or politicians like Gabrielle Giffords, will it take before the United States adopts robust gun regulation? It's hard to find a rational justification that explains the ease with which people can buy firearms, including assault rifles, in spite of prior criminal backgrounds, drug use, histories of domestic violence and mental illness, or direct contact with extremists, both domestic and foreign.
Over and over again, UN, UN, UN. Now let's kind of shift gears here, because let's find out this organization, this UN peacekeeping organization, this beast who embraces the Luciferian teachings of Helena Blavatsky and Alice Bailey, that has a spiritual side that is clearly dedicated to Lucifer, to the devil, Satan. We could just go down the list. There's so many articles here. I'm going to work through this article right here, just because most of you don't know this. This is, if you want to put my screen up, you can, brother, because I'm going to go through this article here. But this is the article from the New American. I love their website. Again, links, they document everything, news stories. Again, I love their news. The New American, it says their little tagline, that freedom shall not perish from the earth. Now, this was an article they posted Monday, February the 19th, 2018. UN, United Nations, exposed as a haven for child rapists. More scandals coming. It goes on to say, after decades of United Nations peacekeeping troops and officials raping women and children all over the world with complete impunity and even diplomatic immunity, a chorus of global outrage and media attention is reaching epic proportions. A handful of predators are now facing justice, but the tsunami of public fury comes as widely reported estimates suggest that some 60,000 victims have been raped and sexually abused by UN, United Nations officials over just the last decade, over just the last 10 years. We're not talking about the last 30, 40 years, 50 years. We're talking about the last decade, 60,000 victims, and we know that's probably a very conservative estimate. All right? It goes on to say, still the wheels of justice are turning, slowly but surely. Just this week, the top children's rights chief at the disgraced UN Children Agency, UNICEF, admitted to raping a 12-year-old boy after the same agency was caught running a child pornography studio in its basement in Belgium using African children it procured. Where's the outcry there? Black Lives Matter. That UN child rapist was sentenced to prison this week. We're not talking about, a rumor. He admitted it and went to prison this week. And he was running UNICEF, the UN branch to help the children. Oh, I'm blown away. Listen, I keep reading. The escalating. Let me back up. The UN child rapist was sentenced to prison this week, but former UN officials have said that the revelations so far are just the tip of the iceberg. Former UN officials saying, you guys hadn't even scratched the surface yet of how bad this is. The escalating pedophilia and sex abuse scandals engulfing the UN and its peacekeeping forces that they keep saying need to come in here in the United States have become so massive that even the pro-UN media, including the notoriously globalist CNN and The Guardian, have been forced to cover it. Indeed, all over the world, the UN is making headlines for raping and exploiting children, not to mention sexual abuse and harassment of the UN's own employees. Various aid groups funded by taxpayers are in the crosshairs too. As the scandals grow, listen to this, the UN formally announced for the first time ever that it would not claim diplomatic immunity to protect the estimated 3,300 pedophiles working for the global organization. Are y'all hearing that? 3,300. We know that if they're admitting 3,300, how many more? Are you seeing the satanic, Luciferian, God, I believe God Almighty is exposing this. Oh man. This is why Jesus is coming back with great wrath, y'all. It says, so far, though, virtually none of the UN troops involved in the widespread rape of children have been held criminally accountable. In fact, those who tried to stop the pedophile rapists were viciously persecuted while the predators continued their horrific abuses. Meanwhile, as the UN faces global criticism for the abuse, the UN Education Agency, known as UNESCO, has just sparked controversy by releasing radical new comprehensive sexuality education standards for humanity. Among other concerns, critics suggested the radical indoctrination program, which begins by normalizing the LGBT agenda, and listen to this, promoting sexual pleasure at age 5, would help sexualize and groom young children, facilitating sexual abuse. UNICEF and other agencies repeatedly caught in pedophilia scandals were also involved in the new sex standards that critics say facilitate the exploitation and abuse of children. So the UN has put forth sexuality education that pushes the LGBT agenda and sexual pleasure for 5-year-olds. Can anybody say satanic, perverted, sick organization that would promote this stuff, riddled and filled with child molesters and rapists? Aside from the UN itself, a number of globalist and leftist non-governmental organizations that purport to fight for the children are also ensnared in growing child rape scandals. So far, tax-funded Oxfam, the radical left-wing outfit that shills for globalism and statism, has taken center stage, with some of its top executives implicated in organizing or covering up orgies with local victims in Haiti, including allegations that some of the girls coerced into the bizarre sex parties were children. Who else was involved in stealing children from Haiti? Oh, Hillary Clinton, the Clinton Foundation. The scandal reportedly goes all the way to the top. Among the explosive stories coming out is just one that just hit the headlines this week. Former UNICEF child rights campaigner Peter Newell, who led the global effort to jail parents who spanked their children as a disciplinary measure, was sentenced to 6 years in British prison for raping a young boy who was just 12 when the predatory UN official began raping him. Now here's a guy telling you that you need to go to prison if you dare spank your child. This guy is molesting and sodomizing a little boy. This is who is coming. This is the satanic organization coming for you. And you going to lay down, Christian man, and let them take your wife and your kids? You better wake up. And you better buy every gun you can afford and every bullet you can afford. I'm sure I'll get a visit for this. Come on with it. I'm just reading, and again, all of this in this article, CNN, NBC, it's all been reported. But I don't hear anybody talking about it. I don't even see it on Facebook. I wonder if they're erasing it from Facebook and YouTube. I wonder if they'll try to take this video down. Some of y'all better mirror it and save it. Let me back up and read that again. Among the explosive stories coming out is the one that just hit the headlines this week. Former UNICEF child rights campaigner Peter Newell, who led the global effort to jail parents who spanked their children as a disciplinary measure, was sentenced to 6 years in British prison for raping a young boy who was just 12 when the predatory UN official began raping him. The horrific abuse was perpetrated by Newell while he worked for the UN, drawing up the guidelines for the totalitarian UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. This guy's writing the totalitarian, basically to take over the children of the world, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. He's writing this while he's molesting a 12-year-old boy. They're facilitating the abuse of children by predators. The U.S. government has not joined the UN CRC, and I hope to God that President Trump resists this organization with every fiber of his being. The UN is evil, people. God warned us in the book of Daniel that the Antichrist and the Antichrist system that he would bring would by peace destroy many. Meaning they would lie. They would pretend to be an organization promoting peace, but they would be destroying many. The Bible is always specifically accurate. I'm going to show you where it says that right before the end times, right before Armageddon, right before God finally says, I've had enough, I'm drawing all the armies of the world to Israel, and I'm going to destroy them at the second coming of Jesus Christ. I'm going to destroy them. He says they're selling a boy and a girl for a harlot, for wine. Joel 3. We'll turn there in a minute. Let's keep going in our little UN article here. I'm just blown away. And the newel-style abuse of children by UN officials is systemic, experts say. UN officials were even caught running a child porn studio in UNESCO's basement, forcing children to engage in sex acts for the cameras. There are tens of thousands of aid workers around the world with pedophile tendencies, but if you wear a UNICEF t-shirt, nobody will ask you what you're up to, said attorney and Professor Andrew McLeod, former chief of operations of the UN's Emergency Coordination Center, who became an anti-sex abuse campaigner after realizing the enormity of the problem. He says, you have the impunity to do whatever you want. It's endemic across the aid industry across the world. The system is at fault and should have stopped this years ago, he warned. Among other policies, McLeod says the tougher background checks, an end to immunity, and more would be a good start, acknowledging the enormity of the problem. Citing UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres' own figures released last year, McLeod and the group of campaigners known as Hear Their Cries estimated that there have been 60,000 victims of UN sex abuse in just this decade. They also estimate that the UN currently employs some 3,300 pedophiles, many of whom have access to children and diplomatic immunity to shield them from justice. When asked by McLeod whether the UN boss Guterres believes legal immunity applies to UN officials who abuse children, the UN spokesperson gave what appears to be the first ever statement categorically stating that child abusers will not be protected by immunity. Now let me just say this. They're not going to change anything. You just need to understand. Some people are getting busted. The higher-ups are going to sacrifice some of the lower ones and throw them in jail. But these people are Satanists. They're Luciferians. Their rituals demand that they sexually abuse and kill and sacrifice children. This is not going away. So I don't care what little thing they try to say that, oh, we're going to change this. They're not changing anything. This just goes on and on. I got to keep reading it though. I mean, everybody needs to know, because I've talked about the UN. Listen, I've talked about their satanic beliefs, the Luciferian beliefs. I mean, it's the Lucis Trust, the Aquarian Age community that's the spiritual arm of the United Nations, linked to the United Nations websites sponsored by the UN for these spiritual websites clearly say, they clearly say they follow Lucifer. I mean, I've covered all this before. This is a satanic Luciferian organization, the United Nations. This is what Revelation 13, when it talks about the dragon, Satan, giving them their power and their seat and great authority. The UN is the beast, and it's a pedophile beast. Y'all need to you just need to wake up to this evil. And let's keep reading here. It says, other former UN employees turned whistleblowers have cited the culture at the UN as one of the reasons for the horrors. Speaking of predatory pedophiles in the so-called aid world who abuse children with impunity, former UN official Razna Wara explained that the culture of silence allows such wrongdoing to continue. Wara, who wrote the book Unsilenced, Unmasking the United Nations Culture of Cover-Ups, Corruption, and Impunity, said that this impunity was likely to continue at the UN, especially if the predators in question are senior UN officials. You hear that? That's exactly what I was saying a minute ago. The higher-ups are going to keep getting away with it. When in 2005, the UN established an ethics office staff members believed that they could report criminal or unethical behavior confidentially without being punished, said Wara, who also suffered retaliation for trying to blow the whistle on UN corruption. However, the UN Ethics Office has proved to be a channel through which wrongdoing is covered up. Very few staff members who have approached the office for help have obtained justice. On the contrary, many have been forced to resign or been fired to deal with the impunity. Wara wrote in her column at Kenya's The Daily Nation newspaper that officials of donor countries should consider withdrawing funds from UN agencies. Please, Trump, stop funding this evil organization. The problem of impunity and persecuting whistleblowers at the UN is well documented. When the UN insiders have attempted to expose even horrifying abuses such as widespread child rape by the UN and its peace armies, the whistleblowers have typically faced persecution by UN leaders, while the perpetrators are generally protected at all costs. Anders Kompass, for example, the former UN human rights worker who tried to stop child rape in Africa by peace troops there, faced extreme retaliation for doing the right thing. After the persecution, he even wondered publicly whether ethics could ever return to the UN. He concluded that the answer was probably no. Top officials are implicated too. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Islamic prince and anti-freedom zealot Zaid al-Hussein, a Jordanian, was a key figure who orchestrated the persecution of Kompass and whistleblowers. Hussein oversaw a vicious campaign of retaliation and abuse waged against his own officials, such as Kompass, who blew the whistle on the rape of children by peace troops in Africa. He also persecuted whistleblowers who used UN agencies sending sensitive technology to North Korea, and another which helped Beijing target human rights activists. Now I want to say this right here. This guy, the Islamic prince, Zaid al-Hussein, works for King Abdullah II of Jordan, whose uncle is Prince Hassan bin Talal, who I think is the #1 candidate to be the Antichrist. And there is no coincidence in all these things. And we know, listen, you want to talk about satanic. Look at this. Look at these entities, these institutions, these massive groups of people. The United Nations, Islam, and the Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican, the great whore of Babylon. One thing they have in common, they all advocate sex with children, molesting children. Muhammad had a wife that was 6 years old, Aisha. It says he consummated the marriage with her when she was 9. Islam is fine with pedophilia. No wonder, this is why Prince Zaid al-Hussein did everything he could to cover it up. The Vatican. We think about all the scandals that have come out with the Vatican in the last 30 years of molesting children by priests, bishops and cardinals, all the way to the top. That's why, folks, you got to know Islam and the Vatican. Even today, I saw articles that the Pope and Islamic leaders are getting together to form a universal code of ethics for their religion, to create the one world religion. And they're all satanic, Luciferian, child molesting, evil, satanic. And you Christian man, you're going to lay down to this? We're going to lay down? They want to destroy this country because they know we are the only ones, if we have the right leader and the people rise up, that we can fight and resist this. And listen, the Bible talks about this in the book of Daniel and other places, that the Antichrist, certain places that he'll have strongholds on and other places will not be. It even talks about in Daniel 11, he will be fought by some king of the north. The Antichrist will be fought and resisted. Could the king of the north be North America? I hope so. Pardon me if I'm getting a little fired up. These people want to come. They want to come for us. They want to come for our wives and our children. Not in my house, he won't. I don't think I've been this fired up in a long time. Let me keep reading here. Mr. Zaid Ra'ad al-Hussein, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, who's helping North Korea. Goes on to say here, Executive Director B. Edwards with the Government Accountability Project, which fights for whistleblowers, was outraged by Hussein's antics. And what of Zaid Ra'ad Hussein, the High Commissioner for Human Rights, who oversaw the reprisal? He remains ensconced in his position. That was nearly 5 years ago, she wrote, citing Hussein's vicious reprisals against his own subordinates who tried to do the right thing and stop the rape of children and attacks on the human rights defenders in China. So now Zaid will step down without seeking a second term. Edwards continued, it seems that no one has any use for him, not his own government, nor the government's representative on the Security Council. He explains his decision to depart come August by saying that human rights climate around the world is appalling. For someone committed to human rights, this would be a reason to stay, but not for Zaid. In any case, he will be long remembered as the High Commissioner for Human Rights who retaliated against whistleblowers, and these whistleblowers against the rape of children. We hope his successor will be more responsible. Even UN employees are not immune from the predators in the UN. That's according to even left-wing globalist publications that love the UN and normally shield it from bad press. Quote, the United Nations has allowed sexual harassment and assault to flourish in its offices around the world, with accusers ignored and perpetrators free to act with impunity. The far-left UK Guardian reported last month, dozens of current and former UN employees described a culture of silence across the organization and a flawed grievance system that is stacked against victims. When victims report the rapes or abuse, they get fired. While U.S. lawmakers have been suspiciously quiet about the horrifying abuse they continue to fund with American tax dollars, British politicians are turning up the heat. Senior Conservative Tory member of the Parliament, Connor Burns, who serves as a former minister of Boris Johnson's parliamentary aid, suggested that what has emerged thus far is just the tip of the iceberg in finding out what has been going on. I believe there has been systemic, organized, and covered up activity going on many, many years, said Burns, who said McLeod need to be taken very seriously. Other British lawmakers, even Prime Minister Theresa May, have suggested that the United Kingdom would withhold funds from the UN until it dealt with the wave of sexual abuse and pedophilia. A handful of U.S. lawmakers have also threatened to defund the UN's predatory UN peace troops, but so far the massive U.S. funding continues to flow. Trump's latest budget proposals cuts the funding somewhat, with disgraced agencies such as UNICEF being cut off entirely. But U.S. taxpayers would still be the largest financiers of the Dictators Club and the horrific crime spree of molesting children. Folks, unreal. Unreal. I hope you don't mind. This thing keeps going. It just keeps going. Unfortunately, the evil now being exposed at the UN was hardly surprising to seasoned observers of the UN. In fact, as this publication and others have documented extensively, the problem is systemic everywhere. And everybody listen to this right here, this part clear. Please listen. Everywhere UN troops go, Africa, Europe, Asia, the Americas, they have been exposed raping children, killing civilians, abusing power, and more. In one town in the Ivory Coast where a survey was done, 8 out of 10 underage girls admitted to being routinely raped and exploited by UN troops. In the same country, the UN and UN-backed jihadist militias who butchered thousands of Christians with machetes violently removed the elected president and put totalitarian Islamic central banker in his place. Even without knowing the ghastly history of UN abuses, it should be no surprise that so much evil inhabits the halls of the Dictators Club. And it is clear that reform is beyond useless. The UN was in fact birthed from a poison seed. Its first Secretary General American Alger Hiss, who played a lead role in creating the UN, was eventually convicted for serving as a spy of mass-murdering Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin, one of history's most savage and murderous tyrants. Since then, the UN has waged practically perpetual war on national sovereignty, self-government, morality, and freedom. Rather than reform, there is only one true solution for neutralizing the threat of the predatory UN. Disband the Dictators Club and discard its remains on the ash heap of history. Congress could help make that happen by passing the American Sovereignty Restoration Act, also known as H.R. 193, to quit and evict the global body. But overcoming establishment and globalist pressure on Capitol Hill will only happen when enough outraged Americans finally raise their voice to protest the UN's despicable behavior. How much more UN child rape and evil the American people will be forced to support then will ultimately be decided by the American voters. Now again, all of this is documented, links to everything. This is, for those of you who want this, the link to this, this is thenewamerican.com/world news/Europe/item/28313, and then just type in New American UN exposed as haven for child rapists. Now, this is the beast. This is the beast. It has 7 heads. It has 10 horns. I've gone into all that. I have a video, a sermon about that from a Sunday morning. It's on YouTube. But folks, I'm not laying down because we have traitors within our own country. The gun control push and the false flags and everything else is so the UN can find a reason to come in here and take control. And I'm going to tell you, if we get the wrong president in 2020, they'll be in here. But then you have to make up your mind. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Well, I'm going to tell you one thing I'm going to do. I'm going to do my very best to provide for my own house. I don't know what else to say, man. I don't know what else to say. There's so much here. I mean, can I read the Bill of Rights? Can I read the First and Second Amendment, Kevin? Is that okay? First and Second Amendment of the Constitution, Amendment 1. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. See, we're the press too right now. We're the press. We're doing news, current events, political commentary. They should not be allowed in any way to abridge or suppress the freedom of speech or the press or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. That's Amendment 1. Amendment 2. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Pretty simple. Shall not be infringed. I love what Ted Nugent says. The Second Amendment is my gun permit. I don't need any other agency telling me whether I can or cannot have. And here's what's interesting. I felt beforehand I needed to look up old Dave Hodges, the Common Sense Show. I said, I know Dave's on this. He's kind of saying, exposing something here. It's his article, most recent, I think, did the Massachusetts legislature become the catalyst for Civil War II? He says, I've written many times in the past that if the government was ever foolish enough to attack the Second Amendment, there would be open rebellion. Some have snickered at this suggestion. However, we now are beginning to acquire some data that shows Americans will never give up their guns unless the gun is taken from the cold, dead hand of the gun owner. Massachusetts is that first foolish state to move on the Second Amendment, but certainly will not be the last state to ban bump stocks for firearms. History has spoken on this issue, and American politicians are not listening to the lessons previously learned. The bump stock confiscation law went into effect almost 3 weeks ago in Massachusetts. Have the police had to hire new employees who are needed to assist in the collection of these now banned accessories? Not exactly, because after 3 weeks, the police cannot believe the fact that only 4, count them, 4 people have turned in their bump stock. In case readers don't know what bump stocks are, they can be substituted for a rifle standard stock, and this permits the gun owner to fire a gun that is more like an automatic weapon than a standard issue fire. The recent law went into effect after it announced that the suspected gunman in Las Vegas massacre, Stephen Paddock, had dozens of rifles with bump stocks in his Mandalay hotel room and presumably used the weapons as automatic weapons, thus increasing the death toll. Many in the media have challenged this account, but it did not keep the Massachusetts legislature from passing the law which banned the bump stock. Although it is not clear whether the bump stocks were used or how they contributed to the carnage that resulted from the shooting, they became the focus of mainstream media's wrath, and the Massachusetts jumped into action. Now residents who violate the new law could spend anywhere from 18 months to life in prison, and this ban took place in the state on February 1st. The new regulations gave residents the options to turn in their bump stocks over to law enforcement with no consequences. But so far, the police departments in many Massachusetts communities have received no bump stock. The people are telling the government where to go and what to do when you get there. A confrontation lies ahead. Massachusetts reacts Lexington and Concord in reverse. A little history here. The Battle of Lexington and Concord, fought on April 19, 1775, was a battle caused by the British desire to disarm disloyal American colonists. The Minutemen, as they were called, were dangerous to the totalitarian regime of the Crown and had to be disarmed. The British dispatched a force that was to make quick work of the rebellious colonists, but the British action backfired, and the colonists refused to give up their guns, and a fierce battle ensued. This event, known as the Shot Heard Round the World, kicked off the American Revolutionary War, 1775 to 1783. Tensions had been building for many years between residents of the 13 American colonies and the British authorities, particularly in Massachusetts. On the night of April 18, 1775, hundreds of British troops marched from Boston to nearby Concord in order to seize an arms cache. Paul Revere and other riders sounded the alarm, and the colonial militiamen began mobilizing to intercept the Redcoat column. A confrontation on Lexington Town Green started off the fight, and soon the British were hastily retreating under intense fire all the way back to Boston. So you get the picture here that this is almost seems like a replay of American history. But when you get back to the issue of bump stocks, they were never proven to be responsible for the 60 Las Vegas massacre deaths that resulted in the Las Vegas shooting. But taking the bump stocks is not the goal. The goal of the deep state is to take every gun from every American. However, this criminal elite knows that would bring about instant rebellion, and they are not equipped to deal with that development. Therefore, the method to seize guns will be accomplished through incrementalism. From the Florida false flag, it will be bump stocks. The next false flags might be in laws that reduce magazine capacity, and soon all guns will be gone, at least on paper, inch by inch. Conclusion: if Americans will not surrender bump stocks, they will never surrender their guns. Nobody knew when Archduke Francis Ferdinand was assassinated that would set off World War I and millions would die. The same could be said here. This irresponsible and unconstitutional action by the Massachusetts legislature could very well be the catalyst for civil war. The ball now lies in the court of the deep state because the people are clearly saying no to gun control. And we're saying no to gun control because we're saying no to the pedophile UN and the pedophile Satanists like Podesta and the Clintons and the Obamas who want to come in, change our laws, remove our Constitution, remove our freedom so that they can kill who they want to kill and take our wives and children. Now, and again, this entire system is satanic and it is anti-Jesus Christ. It is anti-Christian. It is anti-freedom. You know, 2 Corinthians chapter 3 makes it very clear at the end of the chapter. It says where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. You know, America's been blessed not because America has been perfectly righteous or always had righteous leaders or whatever, but America's had a lot of Christians in it for many, many, many decades. And many Christians have prayed, and many Christians have fasted, and many Christians have preached the gospel, and many Christians have prayed and begged for God's mercy on our nation. And that is why we've enjoyed freedom. But let me tell you, guns, whether you ever want to pick up one or not, men with guns have ensured that you have enjoyed that First and Second Amendment and the rest of them. So you know what? I tend to be a realist. I hope and pray that America, that President Trump and others will rise up and resist the Antichrist UN and their pedophile beast world government they want to perpetrate on all of us. I pray more and more people will wake up that we're facing deep state players, MK Ultra tools, Manchurian Candidate type of tools that perpetrate these false flags. And we're not saying, again, they don't happen, that people don't die, that people aren't shot. That's not what we're saying. People have been shot, killed. But who's doing it? It's not the lone gunman, folks. I mean, San Bernardino. I mean, we just go down the list. You know, it's amazing how the eyewitnesses, how their stories either get drowned out or they tend to disappear or die. Anyway, I hope I've laid out the case tonight. I think Christians need to stop being passive, ignorant, and asleep. We are up against great evil, and they're coming. And I'm not laying down, and I hope you guys won't lay down. Anyway, do we have any comments or questions real quick? Huh? No comments or questions? I guess people decided to let Pastor Dean just go off for a little while. And like I said, there's many articles. I could have went through. I mean, there was Jerusalem Post articles. There was CNN articles. I mean, so the stuff I just read from the New American about the UN pedophile scandal, this is, again, it was all put out even in the mainstream media. It was so bad they couldn't even bury it. They had to report on it. But this pedophile thing is huge. The Pizzagate, I mean, the Clintons, the Haiti thing, Podesta, John Podesta and Tony Podesta. Oh, you know what? I didn't turn to it. Let's turn it. Let's go to Joel. I said I'd turn to it. Joel chapter 3, and we'll close with this. I'll get there in a second. I'll tell you what, I'm kind of tired now. I feel like I just kind of let it all out this evening. Told Kevin we're going to have fun tonight. I told Kevin to jump in, but he just decided to let me go on with it, I guess. Listen to this. Let's look at Joel chapter 3, verse 1. For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations, and bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, or Megiddo, for the battle of Armageddon. Megiddo is Armageddon. And will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. And they have cast lots for my people, and they have given a boy for a harlot and sold a girl for wine that they may drink. If you drop down, the Lord says what he's going to do, what happens. He says in verse 9, proclaim this among the Gentiles, prepare for war. Wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause the mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Let the heathen be wakened and come to the valley of Jehoshaphat, Megiddo, Armageddon. For there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, get you down, for the press is full and the vats overflow. For their wickedness is great. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision. For the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. The sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. And then the Lord, Yahweh, the Lord Jesus, shall roar out of Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem. And the heavens and the earth shall shake. But the Lord will be the hope of his people and the strength of the children of Israel. And I could keep reading, but he's telling you that what's happening just prior to his gathering of all nations to Israel for the battle of Armageddon, for the very end, for their judgment, for his wrath. He said they're selling a boy for harlot and a girl for wine. There it is in your Bible. And I just read it in the news. That it's just an entire pedophile, human trafficking in just saturated world, whether it be the United Nations, the Vatican, Islam. This is what? This is the wickedness. He says their wickedness is great. You want to know why the Lord's going to come back? You want to know why? Some of you, you want to know why there's a heaven and there's a hell? There's a real fire and torment and worms that are going to eat people for all eternity, and fire that won't be quenched, and the full consciousness of eternal punishment for these people who've destroyed little children's lives, who've abused them for their sexual pleasure. That's just one reason. Folks, God is serious about this stuff. He is serious about sin, evil, and wickedness. Oh, you people out there, why does God let it continue? Why does he let it go on? Oh, he's going to put a stop to it. Just like he did with Sodom and Gomorrah and the 5 cities of the plain. They were abusing children too. And he said, I've had enough. I've had enough. So, you better prepare for what's coming, because it's going to be a war. It's going to be a real war. So you better get ready. All right, well, we're going to get out of here, folks. I hope y'all have been blessed. I hope you learned something. Be praying, be fasting. Know you have power in the name of Jesus. Put on the whole armor of God. Bind every demon, bind Satan, resist the devil. Believe God's your provider, but you still go to the grocery store or plant a garden. Believe God's your protector, but still, if you can, have a gun, have a sword, have everything you need to protect your family, especially from these blue helmet people called United Nations peacekeepers. Anyway, we're going to get out of here tonight. God bless.